Background. We have been together for 2 years. Prior to our relationship, he took on the role of being a caretaker to his mother, who has a late stage of multiple sclerosis. He is transitioning her to a home since he is no longer able to care for her due to the physical state she is in. She was paying the rent for the apartment they lived in, and once she is in her permanent home, she is unable to pay the rent any longer. My boyfriend is currently unemployed and didn't feel he could take over the lease, so I offered to let him stay with me. I live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, but wanted to offer help. What's currently going on? My boyfriend has a pet rabbit, and I discussed with him a few times what the arrangements for him would be here. My boyfriend wasn't thrilled about having to downsize his cage, but understood we have limited space to work with. I would need to convert my room to an office bunny space and have my bed and cat in the living room. The day comes to rearrange. I moved my desk in a way where I could squeeze a yoga mat behind my desk near the wall. I expressed that I needed just a tiny space for myself to retreat to. This is essential for my mental health. I have borderline personality disorder and need personal space at times. I shared these plans a few times on FaceTime, so it shouldn't have been a surprise what my plans were. Once I showed him my work, he asked if I would consider moving the desk back to how it was, and if I would do yoga in the living room. I said I preferred my yoga space to be more private and that I wasn't willing to change the arrangement. He tried convincing me to change it even after saying no. He says this is a misunderstanding, but after him not letting it go, I told him I felt like he was trying to get me to change what I did to create more space for the bunny cage. The room available is about 10 feet by 11 feet, and we previously agreed the cage could be about 5 feet wide by 2.5 feet long. He became bossy and began speaking to me like a misbehaved child. I will admit I became frustrated because I felt my boundaries were being crossed. I wasn't my best self during this moment. I told him I would not tolerate this behavior, and he hung up on me. I tried calling him back, and he ignored my calls at first. I asked him why he thought it was okay to disrespect someone who was helping him, and just spent 6 hours arranging the place for him and his pet. He justified his behavior, so I told him he needed to find a new place to live, and that I was done. His response was that he didn't want to move in anyway. He is unhappy in the relationship. He doesn't want to be with someone like me forever. My mental health scares him, and that he only agreed to come here because he has no other option. This was the final straw. This person has told me FKU and called me a B in the past, so not the first time I've been disrespected. But this felt different. After what he said, I stood my ground and finalized the breakup. He tried saying he didn't mean what he said. I said I couldn't tolerate that behavior either way, especially while trying to help him. Now he is making me the villain, saying he couldn't believe I would leave him during this dark time in his life. I sacrificed a lot to support him and his family, but I could never see things the same after what he said. I feel awful. I know they are going through so much and he needed me, but I also can't be with someone who says evil things to hurt me after working so hard to help him. The relationship was rocky leading up to this, and this felt like the final straw. I know he began a smear campaign already, because I noticed his mom deleted me on Instagram. I sent her money the other day to help her buy food. Thank you if you made it this far. I'm being made out to be a villain, and it's getting to me. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Just because somebody is going through a hard time does not mean you owe them a relationship. The fact is, he acted entitled when you were trying to do him a favor and became hurtful. It's the smart and self-respectful thing to do to break up with him. You don't need to have him think that you're the good guy or that you're in the right. You just need to get out of the relationship. If he hates you and his family hates you, it really doesn't matter because they're not your concern anymore. Every villain thinks they're the good guy. There's nothing you can do in most relationships for people to see you as the good guy in the end. You just need to cut contact and delete everybody off socials that you have in common. His mom, his friends, himself. You move on with your life, grieve the relationship, and remain no contact. Comment 2. It doesn't even sound like this guy lives locally or that you've dated for real in any serious way, as in living in the same city and seeing each other multiple times every week. So yeah, even someone without a severe personality disorder wouldn't be able to cope with a situation like you describe. It would have been absolutely catastrophic to your equilibrium to let him move in with you. You did the right thing. Also, his financial problems are his own doing. He should have foreseen that his mother couldn't pay his rent forever, and he should have been making alternate plans for when that ended. None of this is your fault. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After the breakup, things got even more complicated. My ex-boyfriend didn't take the breakup well and started showing up at my apartment unannounced. At first, he claimed he just wanted to talk and apologize. But it quickly became clear that he was trying to manipulate me into taking him back. He would stand outside my door for hours, sometimes even overnight, hoping I would let him in. I had to call the police twice to get him to leave, which was incredibly stressful and made me feel unsafe in my own home. During this time, I found out that he had been telling his friends and family that I kicked him out without any warning and that I was being unreasonable. This made me feel even worse because I knew I had done everything I could to help him and his mother. I tried to reach out to his mom to explain my side of the story, but she blocked me on all social media platforms. It was clear that she believed his version of events, and that hurt a lot because I had always tried to support her as well. Meanwhile, my own mental health started to deteriorate. The constant stress and anxiety from dealing with my ex and the fallout from our breakup took a toll on me. I started having more frequent episodes of borderline personality disorder, which made it hard to focus on work and maintain my daily routine. I decided to seek help from a therapist, which was a good decision, but it also meant I had to take time off work to attend sessions and focus on my recovery. One day, while I was at a therapy session, my ex broke into my apartment. He didn't steal anything, but he left a note on my bed saying he missed me and wanted to talk. This was the final straw for me. I filed for a restraining order against him, which was granted. However, the process was emotionally draining and made me feel even more isolated. I had to change my locks and install security cameras to feel safe again. As if things couldn't get worse, I found out that my cat had developed a serious health issue. The vet diagnosed her with a kidney problem that required immediate and expensive treatment. I had to dip into my savings to cover the cost, which added financial stress to an already overwhelming situation. My cat's health became my top priority, and I spent countless hours researching the best treatments and care options for her. During this time, I also started to reflect on my relationship with my ex and realized that there were many red flags I had ignored. For example, he had always been controlling and manipulative, but I had brushed it off as him being protective. I remembered a time when he had insisted on knowing my whereabouts at all times, even when I was just going to the grocery store. He would call me multiple times a day to check in, and if I didn't answer, he would get angry and accuse me of hiding something. Looking back, I realized that this behavior was not normal and that I had been in an unhealthy relationship for a long time. I also started to think about my own patterns of behavior and how they had contributed to the situation. I had always been a people pleaser, often putting others' needs before my own. This had led me to sacrifice my own well-being to support my ex and his mother. I realized that I needed to set better boundaries and prioritize my own mental health in the future. As I continued to work on my recovery, I reconnected with some old friends who had been supportive in the past. They helped me see that I was not to blame for the breakup, and that I had done everything I could to help my ex. Their support was invaluable and helped me regain some of my lost confidence. However, just when I thought things were starting to improve, I received a letter from my landlord. He informed me that he had received multiple noise complaints from my neighbors about my ex showing up at my apartment and causing disturbances. As a result, he decided not to renew my lease, and I had to find a new place to live. This was a huge blow because I loved my apartment and had put a lot of effort into making it a comfortable home. Finding a new apartment was challenging, especially with my financial situation and the need to find a place that would accommodate my cat's medical needs. I eventually found a smaller, less expensive place, but it was in a less desirable neighborhood. Moving was stressful and exhausting, but I managed to get through it with the help of my friends. As I settled into my new apartment, I started to focus on rebuilding my life. I continued my therapy sessions and worked on developing healthier coping mechanisms for my borderline personality disorder. I also started to set boundaries with people in my life making sure to prioritize my own well-being. Despite all the progress I made, I couldn't shake the feeling of being haunted by my past. My ex continued to try to contact me through mutual friends, and I had to cut ties with some people who refused to respect my boundaries. I also struggled with feelings of guilt and self-doubt, wondering if I had made the right decisions. In the end, the consequences of my past relationship continued to affect me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The emotional scars and the impact on my mental health were long-lasting, and I knew it would take time to fully heal. But I was determined to keep moving forward and build a better future for myself. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for calling the cops on my wife for stealing my meds and ruining our lives? I don't like doing this, putting my life online. I'm old school, but I genuinely can't take this anymore. My wife started taking my medications last year. I ended up losing a job because I didn't have them and couldn't perform well. I told her she has to get medications for herself. She finally did, and it stopped. For a couple of weeks. She said she didn't have enough and took more. The next month, she had her medications increased and still took mine. I told her I can't keep doing this. Told her I felt she didn't love me, and she cried and said she would stop. I started a new job not long after, and what do you know? I was out of my medications again. I get 10 milligrams, but my dose is 60 milligrams a day. I get 180 a month, and most days only take 2. She takes so many of mine. I'm mostly out in 2 weeks. I couldn't learn the new job and got fired there too. Screw me, right? At this point, I'm just defeated. So it's been several months. We got evicted from our house, living week to week in a cabin, and she's the only one working. I have been having interviews lately, and things are getting better. So I thought, filled my medications 2 weeks ago, and I have 1/3 left yesterday. I couldn't believe it. She's recently been telling me how she cries for me and how she notices I've been wanting to do better for us, and I find this out. I spoke to her last night and she said the same thing. I feel like crap and blah blah. I told her you either need rehab, Narcotics Anonymous, or I'm calling the cops at this point. I'm on probation and I can't support this. That's why I got on medications, because I couldn't control my impulsiveness and emotions. And this actually works. To add, she tells me today I'm not there for her emotionally or mentally, even though I try to be supportive and talk to her about everything. She's the one that barely talks to me. I actually broke up with her last year over the lack of communication before she started taking my medications. Today she tells me taking the medications is the only thing getting her through the day since she can't talk to anyone. LOL. What a joke. Now she wants to break up. So you want to take all my medications, then leave me because you're triggered, because I can't keep a damn job, because you take my medications. Just by the way, before this, I was at my last job for over a year, and the 2 jobs before that, 5 years each. I only quit to do better and go to school, and I had another job offer that just didn't pan out, you can say. I'm about to lose it. I want to yell and cry and call the cops and lock her up. I love her more than anything next to my 7-year-old son, and can't believe she's done this. Especially since she's in training as a drug recovery counselor. Funny, huh? Advice? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your wife is an addict. Actually, things like training as a drug recovery counselor and lashing out and threatening to leave you when you won't be supplying anymore make perfect sense. I was an addict once. Not so good times. I'd cut her out of your life, but man, easier said than done, huh? Comment 2. If anyone ever took my ADHD meds, it would be grounds for a breakup. She's basically telling you that her recreational addiction needs trump your actual diagnosis and healthcare needs, and she doesn't care. Lock them up, and then either get her help or let her know that was a deal breaker. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. So, after my last update, things took a turn I didn't see coming. I had another interview lined up, and I was really hopeful about it. I made sure to hide my medications this time, thinking that would solve the problem. I put them in a place I thought she'd never look, inside an old toolbox in the shed. I felt pretty clever about it, to be honest. I went to the interview feeling confident, but when I got back, I noticed the toolbox was slightly ajar. My heart sank. Sure enough, my medications were gone again. I confronted her and she broke down, saying she was sorry and that she needed them to function. I was furious, but also felt a pang of guilt. Maybe I wasn't doing enough to help her. The next day, I decided to take a different approach. I called her parents, hoping they could talk some sense into her. They were shocked and promised to come over and have a serious talk with her. When they arrived, it was a tense atmosphere. Her mom was crying and her dad looked like he was ready to explode. They sat her down and tried to reason with her, but she just kept saying she needed the medications to get through the day. Her dad suggested she go to rehab, but she flat out refused. She said she couldn't leave her job and that rehab would ruin her career. I felt stuck in a tough situation. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my son and how all this was affecting him. He's been staying with my parents because I didn't want him to see us like this. I missed him terribly and felt like I was failing him as a father. The next morning, I decided to call my probation officer to explain the situation. I thought maybe they could offer some advice or resources. Big mistake. They told me that if I couldn't control my household, it could affect my probation status. I was terrified I couldn't risk going back to jail, not with my son depending on me. Feeling desperate, I decided to take a drastic step. I called the cops on her. I thought maybe a night in jail would scare her straight. When they arrived, she was hysterical. They took her away, and I felt a mix of relief and guilt. I spent the night alone in the cabin, feeling like the worst person in the world. The next morning, I went to bail her out, but she refused to come home with me. She said she was done and that she was going to stay with a friend. I was devastated. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on finding another job. I had a couple of interviews, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't concentrate, and it showed. I didn't get any of the jobs. Meanwhile, she was still taking my medications, even though she wasn't living with me. She'd come by when I wasn't home and take them. I felt completely powerless. Then, I made another mistake. I decided to stop taking my medications altogether, thinking maybe I could manage without them. I wanted to save them for her, hoping it would help her get through her days. But without my medications, I started to spiral. My impulsiveness and emotional instability came back with a vengeance. I lashed out at my parents, my probation officer, and even my son. I felt like I was losing my mind. One night, I got a call from her friend. She had overdosed on my medications and was in the hospital. I rushed over, feeling a mix of anger and fear. When I got there, the doctors told me she was in critical condition. I sat by her bedside, holding her hand and praying she'd pull through. I felt like it was all my fault. If I had just handled things differently, maybe none of this would have happened. She eventually pulled through, but the doctor said she needed to go to rehab. This time she agreed. She checked into a facility and I felt a glimmer of hope. But that hope was short-lived. My probation officer found out about the overdose and decided I was too much of a risk. They revoked my probation and I was sent back to jail. I felt like my world was crumbling. In jail, I had a lot of time to think. I realized I had made so many mistakes, and now I was paying the price. My son was staying with my parents, and I missed him more than anything. I felt like I had let him down. I wrote letters to him every day, hoping he'd understand someday. As for her, she completed her rehab program and started working again. She sent me a letter saying she was sorry for everything and that she hoped I could forgive her. I wanted to forgive her, but I also felt so much anger and betrayal. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. So here I am, back in jail, trying to piece my life back together. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm trying to stay hopeful. I just want to be a good father to my son and find some stability in my life. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to take back my manipulative ex-girlfriend after she lied about being pregnant and accused me of rape? So the past 6 months have been the wildest roller coaster ride of my life. More like a horror movie. Back in November 2023, a woman I used to see but recently broke up with pretended she was pregnant, lying to me first and then to my family. She was convincing and had pictures of the positive test, belonging to one of her sisters-in-law, as I later found out, and thought she wouldn't lie about it because I never knew her to lie before and thought she would be crazy to lie about such a huge thing in our conservative culture and religious community. Well, it turns out that's exactly what she was. I was pressured, threatened to marry her, and felt it as my responsibility because that's how you patch it up in our community. But I found out she wasn't pregnant. From her messages with her best friend on her phone, and then a lot of questioning. There were many more manipulations to follow over the months. One of the biggest ones being her previous marital history and her age. She pretended she was 28, but according to her passport, she's 40. She later claimed she's actually 28 or 29 or 31. Different dates and different conversations. So with that and everything else from the very beginning, I don't know what to believe anymore. Oh, and the fact that I didn't even want the marriage in the first place. I tried to divorce her many times, but she constantly threatened me with either her family, brothers, or with unalived. Long story short, and skipping over many details, I tried to make things work between us a few times, but it kept on breaking down. Eventually, one crazy night where she was around my and my family's place, she hounded me for almost the whole night about me not having intimacy with her. At this point, I had just stopped, and my father had to even get involved and calm her down, warning he would call the police because of her harassment. She wasn't allowed back in our house, and we basically ignored her calls for a couple of days until things calmed down. But then, the unexpected happened. She reported me to the police, alleging that I had rapped her multiple times. Ironic considering she was pressuring me for intimacy, when I had never done anything non-consensual with anyone in my entire life. I was arrested and detained for a day while being interrogated and examined before being let out on bail. It turns out she then dropped the case, furiously shouting at the police for arresting me and apparently now launching legal action against them. Bizarre, what did she think would happen when reporting rap? She has since begged for my forgiveness and for me to take her back, but I don't have the slightest desire to do so. I don't seek revenge, and I can even forgive her, but I just want peace of mind and for her to get out of my life. She's claimed numerous times since then that she would accept my decision even to divorce. But then, when I brought it up yet again recently, with an intermediate mutual friend present, I ain't meeting her alone. She denied it and insists on staying with me. My dilemma is this. I suspect she likely has borderline personality disorder based on a lot of symptoms, and her mental state has apparently deteriorated. If I divorce her, I fear she might unalive or harm herself, and that would be on my head. Alternatively, she could even reopen the rap accusations case, and I could get rearrested. Or she could, at the very least, set her family on me, or get some type of revenge for what I don't know. Either way, it could get messy. If anyone has any advice on the next steps, feel free. Otherwise, it's been great finally venting. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't know if this is weird advice, but after divorcing her, call the police? And say she threatened to unalive herself? At least they'd keep her safe somewhere? And yeah, run? Laugh out loud. If she's 40? That would be unreal. I'm so sorry for what you had to go through, but yeah, just run. Don't feel bad for someone who did you so wrong. Comment 2. What she does to herself is not on you, nor your responsibility. Don't enable her nonsense. You need to keep any kind of messages of her admitting to falsely accusing you, plus any evidence she lied about being pregnant. Then turn her in for the false accusations. Stand up for yourself. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post. So, after the whole police incident, things took another turn. I thought the worst was over, but I was wrong. A few days after she dropped the case, I received a letter from her lawyer. She was now claiming that I had emotionally abused her throughout our relationship and was demanding a substantial amount of money as compensation. This was a shocker because, despite everything, I never thought she would go this far. I had to get my own lawyer involved, and now we're in the middle of a legal battle. In the meantime, her family started showing up at my workplace. They weren't violent, but their presence was intimidating. They would stand outside, glaring at me, making it clear that they were watching. My boss noticed and called me into his office. He was understanding, but made it clear that this couldn't continue. I was at risk of losing my job if this harassment didn't stop. I tried to talk to her family, explaining that I just wanted to move on with my life, But they wouldn't listen. They accused me of ruining her life and demanded that I take her back. It was clear that they were under her spell, believing every lie she told them. One night, I got a call from her best friend. She was drunk and started spilling secrets. She told me that my ex had a history of manipulating people, and that I wasn't the first guy she had done this to. Apparently, she had pulled similar stunts with 2 other men before me, but they had managed to escape her clutches. This revelation was both a relief and a burden. It wasn't just me, but it also meant that she was a master manipulator, and getting rid of her wouldn't be easy. The next day, I confronted her with this information. She denied everything, of course, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew that her game was up. I told her that I was done playing her games and that I would be filing for divorce, no matter what. She broke down, crying and begging me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. As expected, she didn't take it well. She started showing up at my house, banging on the door and screaming. My neighbors called the police several times, but she always managed to leave before they arrived. It was a nightmare. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and was constantly on edge. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from her brother. He apologized for their behavior and said that he wanted to meet to discuss things. I was skeptical, but agreed. We met at a local cafe, and he told me that he had found out the truth about his sister. He had gone through her phone and found messages that confirmed everything I had said. He was furious with her and promised to keep her away from me. For a while, things seemed to calm down. She stopped showing up at my house, and her family backed off. I thought I could finally breathe. But then, I got another letter from her lawyer. This time, she was claiming that I had stolen money from her and was demanding even more compensation. It was clear that she wasn't going to give up easily. My lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible to prove my innocence. I went through old messages, emails, and bank statements, anything that could help my case. It was exhausting, but I knew I had to do it. During this time, I started seeing a therapist. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me make sense of everything. The therapist helped me understand that my ex likely had deep-seated issues that went beyond our relationship. She also helped me realize that I wasn't responsible for her actions or her mental state. One day, while going through some old photos, I found a picture of us from the early days of our relationship. We looked so happy, so in love. It was hard to believe that things had turned out this way. I remembered how she used to laugh, how she used to make me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. But then I remembered all the lies, the manipulation, and the pain she had caused. It was a bittersweet moment, but it helped me find closure. As the legal battle continued, I started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, started going out more, and even picked up a new hobby. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to move on. Eventually, the court ruled in my favor. I didn't have to pay her a dime, and the judge granted the divorce. It was a huge relief, but I knew that this wasn't the end. She could still come after me, still try to ruin my life. But for now, I had won. Looking back, I realized that I had ignored so many red flags. I had let myself be manipulated because I wanted to believe in the good in people, but now I knew better. I knew that I had to be more cautious, more aware of the signs. So that's where things stand now. I'm still dealing with the aftermath, but I'm stronger for it. Thanks for reading and for all the support. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.